Well, this is episode one of our the holistic Hivemind Google Hangouts that we're going to start doing here, and we have Emily Bartlett, who is a blogger at Holistic Squid, and the new author of this is like totally backwards, Feed Your Fertility, which I just finished last week, and I think is an awesome resource.
Thanks,
So,
Danelle.
why don't we start first? Just tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of, your practice and why you wanted to write this book, like what you thought was missing from the other fertility books out there.
Sure. Well, I've been practicing Chinese medicine and acupuncture for about 11 years. And I first got into it because I thought, oh, this will be a great way to make money, And then I realized that, our generation, I'm nearing 40. So my mother's generation was the women's lib generation. And thankfully, they paved the way for us to have careers that we want and wait to have families, not necessarily settle down before we're ready. And that's fantastic. But the downside of that is many of us have waited to start families until we have all of our other ducks in a row. And biology has not quite caught up with society. So what's happening is that we are encountering a lot of challenges sort of as our generation comes to the point where they're like, okay, we're ready to have kids. And so I wrote this book because I feel like there's so many ways that we can help to optimize fertility that are being overlooked. So Western medicine has a lot of great things to offer, and there's a lot of, advice that's being thrown out there, like take maca, eat more lean protein, that sort of thing. And I feel like none of it was really grasping the whole picture. My background in nutrition is, well, to start off with, I grew up standard American diet, eating Cocoa Pebbles and Pop-Tarts, and that was sort of my childhood. And then I started to discover real food as I, branched out onto my own. And around the time that I was pregnant with my first child, I discovered the Weston Price Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization that focuses on bringing awareness to traditional eating, which simply means eating how our great-grandparents would have eaten. It's nothing complicated. It's not fancy nutrition. It's just good old-fashioned eating. And what I found was that good old-fashioned eating marries beautifully with not only Chinese medicine, which is a traditional medicine, but also with optimizing fertility. And so writing this book was sort of a no-brainer for me because I felt like there was nothing out there that was really addressing how to really get to the roots of how to eat to truly nourish ourselves. So that's why Feed Your Fertility came into being. So.
Okay, so now how has America gotten preconception diets wrong then? what are we not doing right, and what are we doing completely wrong?
Yeah, I mean, I think that when Laura and I wrote this book, we sat down and ordered all of the fertility books that are out there on the market, and there were a lot of things that were right. Everyone seemed to agree that eating junk is not a good idea, and that's fantastic. I think that in general, moving away from eating processed foods is smart, but there is a huge misconception among modern nutrition about avoiding meat, avoiding fats, which can be really essential when you're trying to deeply nourish your fertility, or anything for that matter. As I know Danelle, saturated fats are being there. Well, I mean, if you've seen the Time magazine piece, the butter is getting a whole new accolades, which is fantastic. But generally, the idea of saturated fat is that it's going to kill us. And in fact, it's more of the newfangled fats and all of the processed foods that have been sort of marketed as health foods that are actually the issue. So I found that within the fertility diets, there's a lot of there's a lot of indication that we should be eating, polyunsaturated fats like canola oil, and focusing on foods like soy as a health food. And those are simply just not good traditional nutrient dense foods.
Unmute. There we go.
You just for a second there.
So I get asked this a lot because I'm a big promoter of, not only a whole foods diet, but one that, contains saturated fat and animal foods, because I do find that they're so helpful for fertility.
Yeah.
So all the time, probably once a week, I get emails. What about me? I'm vegetarian. What about me? I'm vegan. Not much of your recipes apply to me, or I can't eat that stuff. What do you say to someone who is struggling with infertility and yet eats a vegetarian or vegan diet?
Yeah, that's a great question. In my idealistic world, in my blogging world, I say, well, don't eat that way. But in my practice, where I actually have people that come in and sit in front of me and, pay for my advice, I find that I need to give an answer that actually is helpful for the person in front of me. And so when somebody comes to me and they're vegetarian, it's much more simple. I can say, okay, what are you willing to eat? Are you ovo-lacto, meaning do you eat eggs? Do you eat dairy? If so, that's fantastic. And then we really focus on the sourcing of those animal products. So with dairy, don't just go for, the organic that's at your regular grocery store and just be done with it. Go to great lengths to make sure you're sourcing well, if possible, from your farmer so that you know what those animals have been eating. But ideally, we want grass-fed, pasture-raised animal sources. So those cows are out on pasture in the sunshine, and not being given a bunch of, antibiotics and drugs. And then same goes for chicken or for eggs. So a lot of vegetarians are willing to eat eggs, and it's confusing when you go to the egg aisle at your grocery store and there's like cage-free and brown eggs and omega-3 eggs. And what I tell people is, number one, your first choice, if you can, is to get pasture-raised eggs from pasture-raised hens. And those are basically eggs that chickens have been out eating grass in the sunshine, and that sunshine and grass and clover and bugs transforms into fantastic nutrition in those eggs. I had the luck of being able to go visit my farmer, which I encourage everyone to do if you can, because it's so eye-opening. And at that point, I was pretty sure that free-range organic was a good choice, and I would say it's definitely the second best choice after pasture raised when it comes to poultry and eggs. And we visited the free range organic chickens, and they were in a barn, and they had plenty of room to run around. They looked happy enough. I didn't feel, sickened by the experience, but they weren't outside. They were in a barn, and they had access, as in a little door that they never went out of, to outdoors. But they weren't getting that super powered nutrition and health from being out in the sun and picking through the grass and the bugs. So, going back to your original question about vegetarians, really being picky about the source of the animal products that you're getting will make a big difference in that nutrition. So then for my vegan patients, it is a much, much bigger challenge. I try my best to compassionately educate about, the benefits of the animal fats and try and understand why they've chosen veganism. And if they're really committed to that lifestyle, that's absolutely their choice. In that case, I think it's really important to have regular blood work just to make sure that they're not becoming deficient in any ways, and then supplementing where they need to. And then also making sure that they're really loading up on things like coconut oil, and, all of the plant-based saturated fats, some like obviously most vegans are going to be eating tons of avocado anyway, but making sure that that's not slacking and that they're getting plenty of fats wherever they can. So, other nutrients of importance are like the B vitamins, but every vegetarian or vegan will argue that B vitamins is not an issue, but it can be. So, just to be looking out for things like that and making sure you're getting enough protein and all those things.
Okay. All right. Now, quickly, my son woke up. He never sleeps when I want him to sleep.
I totally understand. I just had a child at the window while I was trying to talk.
So I'm going to ask you another question and quick flip it to my profile while I run upstairs and grab him real quick. But, I talk a lot about food. And food for me, like what we eat is always the foundation of our health. And if someone is struggling with fertility, that's always the first thing, I talk about first. But what besides food actually hinders our fertility?
Good question. I had a fantastic discussion with a holistic healer that my family sees. He's a cranial osteopath and just a really brilliant practitioner. And he had asked me, or I had asked him in regards to the healing that we were looking for our family, what role does nutrition play in regards to like the degree of importance in our overall healing? So sort of vague question, but how important is nutrition? Because that wasn't something I was discussing with him. And he said, Emily, nutrition takes a far, far second to whether or not our emotional body is in line with our path of healing, which was a really, sort of simple but really profound statement as well. And so as part of Feed Your Fertility, we talk a lot about food and where our food is coming from and what to eat. But nourishing your fertility is really actually so much more than just what we eat. It's, how we move through life, how we manage our stress, how we stay active and move, and how much our lives are in alignment with what we truly want. So that's basically my answer. There's so many things other than food, but most importantly, it's about making sure you're in alignment with where you want to go. So having a baby is it's a wonderful goal, having a family, but is your life, if you're a lawyer working 16-hour days and stressed out and not sleeping well and not moving and taking care of yourself, are you actually in alignment with what you're trying to achieve? So that's the answer to that question.
No, that's great. I find, it took me a long time to kind of figure out the kind of mental and emotional blocks that sometimes we have. And, even now, like, muscle strength or exercise or things that I want to do are great things. And yet I don't see them happening because I'm not doing them. And so it's really kind of trying to figure out what my priorities really are and in regards to my health and what space I'm kind of making for them. And I think, unfortunately, that aspect of our fertility seems to take so much longer for people to actually, figure out.
Yeah. I think another term that I like to use is the idea of conscious conception. And, this is not something that you're going to find a lot of studies for because there's not a lot of money to be made around it. And it's a really hard thing to have a metric for. But in 11 years of practicing, I definitely have seen that when an individual comes into alignment with what they truly want out of life, who they truly are in that moment, then everything becomes much simpler. And, again, it's not something that is easy to record, but I've seen it happen over and over again. Sometimes it's things like you are completely miserable in your job it is sickening you, and it's completely impeding everything, you know, that you want in your life. And that's a pretty obvious one. Sometimes it has to do with like the space that you're living in, or maybe you're not actually even in the right relationship, you know, but stepping into baby making in a conscious way brings a more profound level of satisfaction, I think, to the whole process too.
Sure. Okay, so why don't we talk about some specific issues that, you know, I get asked a lot, and I see a lot of people asking all the time. And one of the big ones, especially in my private Facebook group, is talking about luteal phase. And, you know, short luteal phase and low progesterone seem to be a big issue for a lot of women. Can diet help lengthen the luteal phase? What kind of things can women do to kind of stretch that out and make their bodies produce a little bit more progesterone?
That's an interesting question. Yeah, and I tend to come at this question more from a Chinese medicine perspective, and also because a lot of people come to see me already using Western medicine. Like a lot of women will be, you know, doing Clomid. And so we skip right ahead, and, you know, there's not the, oh, can I be eating yams for my, you know, luteal phase? I honestly, I find that like improving the cycle overall is a better approach to, you know, rather than trying to pull it apart and go, okay, I need to lengthen my luteal cycle. I think standing back and looking at the bigger picture of what you may be missing in your overall program, not even just diet, but mostly diet, making sure that you're sleeping enough so that the cycles of your life down to, you know, waking, and because, you know, there's so many cycles. Day and night mimics the menstrual cycle, the follicular and luteal phase. And so making sure that you are getting the big picture as opposed to trying to find individual remedies for luteal phase or any other components of the menstrual cycle, I think are actually it's more effective than trying to pull it apart like that.
Okay. Now, you also talk in your book a bit about advanced maternal age. So is there hope for women of advanced maternal age to kind of turn back the clock a little bit and figure out how to produce quality eggs?
Yeah, you know, this is a really important and interesting topic. And I think that the short answer is yes. I see so many women who go to their reproductive endocrinologist, you know, their doctors, and they have their blood work done, and they get their FSH number and it's too high, and they get their AMH number and it's really low. And basically the doctors look at them and they go, okay, well, you can either get an egg donor or adopt, you know, goodbye. And then they come to me, and, you know, in the beginning I was like, why are you coming to me? I don't know. You know, I'm not a miracle worker. But what I found is that, in fact, you know, Western medicine's tools don't address the ability to nourish and both protect and, to a certain extent, restore fertility. I talk about fertility a bit like an aperture. So, you know, if you imagine that as you come to your, you know, 40s, into your 40s, our aperture for fertility starts to decrease. But it's not like it just goes, oh, your fertility is off. It goes like this. It sort of has this ebbing and flowing. And depending on what's going on with your life, that may stay open a bit longer. And some months you may have a better chance than others. It's a lot like a gumball coming out of a gumball shoe. You know, you put your quarter in and you see all the gumballs, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get a good gumball at the end of the, once you put your hand into the slot. So that is one of the reasons that really nourishing yourself is so important. The 3 months leading up until ovulation is what influences the quality of those eggs that have been basically almost cryogenically sealed in there since we were conceived as women. And so by eating a nutrient-dense diet, managing your stress, and doing all of these things to optimize your fertility, getting acupuncture, taking your herbs, you certainly can reverse your particular fertility chances. It's never a guarantee, but I've definitely seen women who have, what doctors consider practically non-detectable AMH turn things around and have healthy babies over the course of like about 6 months to a year. And that's happened, numerous times in my practice. So.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Now, there was actually one thing that I read in your book that I had not read anywhere else before. And it was, you were talking about Hashimotos, and the antibodies that attack the thyroid in Hashimotos also attack the ovaries. News to me. I've never heard that. Can you explain that a little bit more?
You know what? You need to talk to Laura. My co-author, when we partnered, she is the absolute uber nerd when it comes to fertility medicine. She comes up with stuff like that, and I'm like, really? That's amazing. I never heard that before. So I'll have her get back to you on that.
Okay, I will definitely add it in the show notes because literally I was just, blown away by that. How about let's talk just a little bit about PCOS?
Yeah.
Because it seems like women with PCOS, they either are in one of two camps. A lot of times it seems like, hypothyroidism is more the issue, and they deal with, the weight gain and the actual, cysts on the ovaries. And a lot of times it almost seems like the hypothalamic amenorrhea, where they're just not ovulating at all, but maybe they don't deal with the weight issues. So I guess, can you talk a little bit about, maybe some of the root causes with PCOS and why they cause different symptoms and what we can do about them?
Yeah, I mean, PCOS is one of those really big diagnoses, and it seems to cover a lot of different groups of symptomology, as you're pointing out. I think that it's, from my clinical experience, I feel like it usually has a root in historically poor diet. So that tends to be, chronic consumption of, and I think polyunsaturated fats are probably one of the biggest contributing factors. We run around putting canola oil in absolutely everything. You go to Whole Foods and all of the prepared stuff is with canola oil. It gets grossly overlooked, and we focus on how much sugar we're consuming. And sure, with PCOS, sugar and refined starches are an issue once you're already in the throes of it. But I think that a lot of the inflammatory processes that have led to dysfunctioning ovaries, it's an issue of chronic malnutrition, basically. And I also think that there is pretty strong indication that there's a hereditary component with PCOS. And a lot of times the women who are non-symptomatic often have, the mothers would have had similar kind of, might not have been diagnosed, but have had similar issues, challenges getting pregnant, potentially miscarriages early on. And oftentimes that's the reason. But I do think that, you can have PCOS with different body types and different symptomology. With PCOS, I do find that for fertility purposes anyway, going down the road of a more paleo diet is actually pretty effective in helping the ovaries to let one follicle come to ovulate, as opposed to that whole ring of pearl thing happening. But if we're talking about PCOS for someone who is not, ready to start trying to conceive for a few years or is past conception age, then there's some really good reasons to not necessarily do such a restrictive diet, but actually work on healing your metabolism and getting your endocrine system to work properly again. So.
Okay. So before we wrap it up, I'd kind of like to give everybody at least one thing that they can do today to kind of increase their fertility. So what is, your quick tip, the one thing that everybody should be doing that helps to support their fertility?
This is the one that I personally want to do today, so I'm going to share that. I think that we need to slow down more. And by taking, it doesn't even really need to be 5 minutes, but let's just say 5 minutes where you turn off the ringer and the vibrator on your phone, just shut your door to your office or wherever you are, put your kids in front of an iPad for 5 minutes, and set a timer on your phone, and just sit quietly, close your eyes, and breathe. Focus on your breath coming in and out of your body, and just take that time. You don't have to call it meditation if that seems overwhelming or intimidating, but really taking that time to be still and listen to absolutely nothing can help us to get more in sync with our bodies and figure out what we actually need, so that when everything turns back on again, you just have a little bit of an advantage over the buzz that's happening all around us. I lost your sound there.
There.
Got it.
Okay. It's funny you actually mention that, because I started a private Facebook chat group, I don't know, about a month or so ago, and we do weekly challenges. And last week, the weekly challenge was taking 5 minutes, either for meditation or prayer or journaling or just something just to be quiet and just be. So yeah, that's fantastic advice. It's great that you said that.
Okay, I'll do it if you do it.
All right. And it's funny. I don't know, months ago when I started trying to do that, I thought, okay, I can do this. It's only 5 minutes. And I tried counting. I think I got to 2 before I started thinking, oh, I should blog about this. I should tell so-and-so about this. This is really cool. And I thought, wait a second, I'm not doing it. I'm not being quiet at all. I'm like, I was just constantly thinking. So it's taken some time for me to actually be able to kind of train myself to just be quiet and not do anything.
Yeah, I think that goes for any time we're trying to create a new pattern. It's not that you're just going to do it. It's about creating a practice and doing it over and over again and sort of sucking at it for a while until it becomes part of just how you are on a daily basis.
Yes, perfect. Well, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to chat with me. I'm glad we finally got a chance to connect and talk about your book.
Thank you, Danelle. Thanks so much.
It's really great. I found it super easy to read. I think I kind of paged through it in a weekend easily. So it's full of great information, and I hope everybody goes out and gets it. So yes.
Thank you so much.
So yes, well, and have a fantastic day.
Thank you. You too.
All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.